Frankenstein doesn't have much of a character. He has a bit of an arc, but it's not really much of one, much like most of the Heroes of Olympus characters. There's one thing about his journey as a character that I hate to this day, and that is the fact that his gaining of confidence and a little bit more character growth is almost intrinsically tied to the fact that he loses weight. Let's discuss it. Now, I suppose my wording may not be the most accurate. He doesn't lose weight, he's just given a body change. Frank is previously described as someone with a bit of a sumo build, which let's save that conversation for someone who's a little bit more qualified to talk about the problematic elements of Rick's writing in terms of characters of colour. But he's also in general described as someone who's quite cuddly, has a little bit of chub on him, has a rugby player type build. And so then in House of Hades, when he is murdering a bunch of monsters, he physically changes. He gets taller, he, as it's described, grows into his weight, becomes more stocky, and, loses the cuddly nature as he is previously described as having. And this is basically almost tied to the arc he then goes on in House of Hades of him gaining confidence, becoming a Roman leader, and just in general stepping up into a role as someone who can lead the Romans. And while that whole part of him gaining confidence, of him believing in his abilities, as he actually talked about in House of Hades, stepping into the role Annabeth left behind when she fell into Tartarus, of being the de facto, not leader, but guider of battle strategy and, the war that they're in. They need someone who can do those things. And Frank wants to become this person because he is a child of a war god. That is all brilliant. I have no issue with that. What I do seriously take issue with is the fact that the way in which this is presented to us is him killing a bunch of monsters, like literally destroying every single one of these like cow, dog, monster creatures in Italy entirely, like wiping every single one of them out, and then being gifted a body change. Because the implications of the fact that he gains more confidence because he's now more conventionally attractive, I don't even know how, like, the reasoning behind why he had to change physically for him to gain the confidence in his abilities. The logic is just not logicking, and it's a problem I've had even since I first read the books back in 2016. Because it just, what is the reason? Why does someone have to physically change appearance of growing into their muscle, gaining muscle, quote unquote losing weight, to gain confidence and to be seen as a leader and have skills? I mean, there's this whole section where, like, Leo, I've talked about, bullies Frank throughout most of the series. The moment Frank grows into his height and his weight and gains more muscle, he's not bullied as much. So it actually leads into this whole thing of, like, if you lose weight, if you gain muscle, people will stop bullying you and people will respect you more. I don't know if this was Rick's intention. I doubt this was his intention behind the whole thing. But it's really messed up. The whole thing was, he had an arc that could have been utilized so much better without the body change. Frank does have a confidence issue. I mean, justifiably, Leo's a bully. He didn't really get to lead his own quest in Son of Neptune, which I'll be doing a video about in general. I've done like a 1 to 2 with the rewriting, which I'll link down below. I'm doing one in regards to that a little bit more in future. But Frank's whole thing is that he is perfectly capable of being a leader, and honestly should have been the one leading the charge in Son of Neptune. And also should have been the one considered to be stepping up into Annabeth's place, because he is a child of, war. He is a child of a war god and a battle god, and someone who is, uniquely tied to battle strategy. I mean, he's the one who came up with the plan for the war games in Son of Neptune. He is very skilled, and yet we never see him step up into this role. until much later on, after he's gone through the body change, and kind of also after Jason gives him the role of saying, you're going to be Praetor now. None of it is actually done by Frank himself. Frank is almost quite passive in his own arc of gaining confidence, becoming a leader, stepping up into, understanding that just because he's a child of a war god doesn't mean he has to be a killer, doesn't mean he has to be violence all the time. He can be a battle strategist. He can be someone who, leads people into a battle with the intention of trying to protect them as much as possible and, solve the situation. Like, he does so much of Frank's thing in House of Hades is killing. And even in Son of Neptune, basically anytime we have Frank's POV, a lot of the stuff he does is kill. He kills basilisks, he kills these monsters, and it's like there's just a lot of that is tied into his ability into growing in confidence. And it's just strange to me because there are so many other ways of him being given advice by Annabeth and Percy on being a leader and believing in himself. Jason also doing this thing, and then Frank also then believing in himself afterwards when he steps up into this role when Annabeth is gone and helps the others guide them to what they need to do. But instead, he changes physically and is given the role of leader instead of proving he could do it. And it's just unfortunate because it's like Rick knew where he was going with this and then just kind of forgot about it. The main thing I really want to mention is that Frank himself says that he wanted to step up into Annabeth's place as being the battle strategist, of being the one who was, in a sense, the de facto leader, the one who would help them in their journey forward because she knows things. Because Mars and Athena are very closely connected gods, even if they're not, the opposing versions of each other in the Roman and Greek version. They are basically the same being in some ways. Mars is very different to Ares. He's not all about war, murder, bloodshed. He's also about strategy. And so Frank is basically the Annabeth, but in Roman version. But that's never really lent into. He never really steps up to offer strategy. He never steps up to lead the others. It's Jason doing it because he's the son of Jupiter, and then Jason giving him the Praetor role, not him proving it or him, stepping up for this role. It's him losing weight, gaining muscle, that leads to him gaining confidence. And while he's a little unnerved about it, he doesn't really talk about how he's not a fan of it. Like, there's no real... the framing of him gaining height and growing into his body is framed all really positively. And it makes me uncomfortable. And it's unfortunate because, like I said, there was a way to do Frank's arc that wouldn't have to have relied solely on him having to lose weight. But what do you guys think? Do you find the fact that there's a scene where Frank grows into his body that leads to him gaining confidence later on to be really weird and kind of problematic a little bit in terms of body image issues? Whatever the case, I want to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What sort of arc would you have preferred Frank to have gone on instead of this? And are there any other characters that you really didn't like the direction of their character arc as well that you would like me to cover in future? Because I have lots of thoughts on these things, and I promise I will be doing a few more positive videos in future as well. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, and as always, thank you so much for tuning into this video. Be sure to subscribe, share with your friends, leave comments, likes, check out my Patreon, check out my books, and yeah, thank you so much, and I'll see you all next time.